Think back on a really memorable class activity from school. Maybe it was a field trip to somewhere exciting, or a Renaissance fair where everyone dressed up in historical costumes. Maybe you built a volcano out of baking soda and vinegar. Those events might have created vivid memories for you, but do you still remember what the point of the lesson was? Maybe you do, but many people would remember the fun parts and forget the actual point of the lesson. Here's another example. In 2019, United Airlines partnered with Sony and Marvel to create an in-flight safety video that featured Spider-Man as a tie-in to its upcoming movie. While the in-flight video itself was quite entertaining, many people raised concerns that the fun parts were distracting from the point of the video. As instructors, sometimes we might be tempted to include attention-grabbing things in our course materials, even if it's not directly related to what students are learning. But is that an effective way to convey information? To answer that, we need to back up a bit and talk about what it means to learn. One view of learning, sometimes called the banking model or the information delivery hypothesis or the information acquisition view, sees the job of the instructor as providing information to the learner and the job of the learner to acquire that information. In this view, the student is seen as a passive individual, an empty vessel waiting for new information to be poured in. Research today shows that this is not really how people learn, at least not effectively. This approach to learning might enable people to engage in rote learning, during which they acquire information but don't really know how to apply or transfer it. Even though many instructors know that this isn't how people learn effectively, they still design the instruction according to this model because it's easier and because they want to avoid bored faces in class. They might add attention-grabbing content to their course materials just because they believe that if students are paying attention, they are absorbing new information. But that's not how effective learning works. Another way of learning is the knowledge construction or the constructivist view. In this view, the learner is not passively receiving information, but actively taking it in, constructing new representations, and fitting it into what they already know. This approach to learning is more effective because it allows the learner to not just remember what they learned, but apply it in the right context. This brings us to the coherence principle. The coherence principle stipulates that learning is improved when interesting but irrelevant content is removed. Interesting but irrelevant content can show up in different forms. One takes the form of random, fun facts that you might find in connection to the topic but not directly related to what's being learned. To study this, researchers compared two groups of learners. In one group, learners were only given information relevant to the topic. In another group, learners were given the relevant information as well as additional fun facts associated with the topic. For example, if the lesson was about how lightning forms, a fun fact about how many people are struck by lightning each year would be included. This fact might be related to lightning, but isn't relevant to the lesson and is added only to grab the learner's attention. These studies were done on paper and on screen and have been replicated in different parts of the world, in other languages and age groups, and on different topics. And the results consistently show that students learned more if they were only provided with relevant information and nothing else. Another form of irrelevant content comes in the form of unneeded words. In another series of studies, one group of learners was presented with just graphics with captions. Another group was presented with explanatory text and graphics with captions that explained the same thing. The results show that learners who were just presented graphics with captions did better in transfer tests. Why is that? Let's go back briefly to the information acquisition view of learning. In this view, the belief is that people learn more when they receive information through more routes. But in the knowledge construction view, learners are not just receiving information, but constructing new mental representations. To do that, they have to select what's relevant, organize it into a coherent representation, and link it to the prior knowledge. The more unneeded information there is, the harder it is to know what's relevant. But there are some caveats. In these studies, students were learning lessons that involved cause and effect, and these were probably easier to condense into graphics with captions. not every lesson can be so easily condensed, and the researchers acknowledged that the participants were all relatively inexperienced, and therefore benefited from having fewer distractions. In a related point, any graphic you include should not only be relevant, but also presented at the right level of detail. If you were designing a presentation on the way blood circulates through the heart, then this detailed sketch of the heart might not be the most appropriate. Instead, a simpler version that focuses on the specific topic would be better. Because it's so easy to find pictures and videos online now, it's easy to pick the first one you come across or the most colorful visual to use and forget that it's important to think about what's relevant to the lesson. Finally, the coherence principle states that learning is improved when there is no background music. Studies have shown that learners who were exposed to content without background music of any kind did better on transfer tests than those where soft background music was added. The reason again has to do with different approaches to learning. The information acquisition view would say that adding music helps draw and maintain the learner's attention, while the knowledge construction view states that anything that isn't about the learning, even if it's soft background music, can interfere with the learner's cognitive process of constructing mental representations. The researchers do acknowledge some exceptions here as well. Obviously, if your lesson is about music, then you should include relevant music. Studies also suggest that some sound effects can help guide viewers through the lesson. For example, studies on children's television show that sound effects can help guide children to specific contents that they should be paying attention to. But before you start adding sound effects to your presentations, remember that here, sound effects are used purposefully as a guiding mechanism, not simply just for fun. In summary, effective learning involves the learner being able to take in new information, construct new mental representations, and linking it to prior knowledge. Anything that doesn't help in this cognitive process can potentially interfere with learning. This is how sometimes we can remember a fun activity but not remember the purpose behind it.